dear colleagues, distinguished guests, welcome to UNEP, GEF, and International Center for Reindeer co-organized side event with the title Reindeer Herding and Resilience, Enhancing Pastoral Ecosystems and Nomadic Societies. So we have 80 minutes for this event. Ms. Susan Gardner kindly join us to give an opening remark on behalf of UNEP. Then we will have 3 presentations setting the scene about the challenges that nomadic herders are facing and the solutions, and how UNEP and the GEF is contributing to the solution of this challenge. Then we will have a panel discussion with our reindeer herders. 3 of them are here. 3 of them couldn't make it because of the visa issues, but they recorded some answers to our panel questions, so we will also broadcast them. Then I'll try to give a wrap-up of the session. So please allow me to introduce Ms. Susan Gardner. She's the Director of Ecosystems Division at the United Nations Environment Program, with 3 decades of international environmental policy experience. She has the privilege of contributing to various initiatives aimed at fostering positive change and resilience within our global ecosystems. Ms. Gardner is an environmental scientist, and her research generated over 30 publications, including a book and book chapters on topics related to natural resource management. As a senior manager at UNEP, Ms. Gardner leads global programs to support countries to promote nature-based solutions for sustainable development. Ms. Gardner, please.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I'm tempted a little bit to just give some informal remarks, but since we're on YouTube, then I'll stick with the formality a bit more. If I have this correct, I think I've just destroyed our microphone. There. Okay. But it is really a pleasure and an honor to be able to open this session and to be talking about such an important topic today at the beginning of this important conference. We're focused on the resilience in pastoral and nomadic societies, and our presence here today reflects this collective commitment to identify sustainable solutions to address the challenges that nomadic herding communities are facing, and that's a bit of what I want to focus my remarks on this morning. At the core of the work lies a simple yet very powerful message, which is that nomadic herding embodies both a rich cultural heritage and a vital source of resilience for coping for the changes and the changing circumstances that we're all facing today. And there's roots spanning 75 countries worldwide. This practice nurtures diverse cultures and ecosystems alike, both of which are precious. 100,000 herders are the stewards of more than 4 million square kilometers of pasture globally, so it has such an important impact on how we sustainably manage our landscapes. But herding communities, we know, are not immune to the pressing challenges of our time. And these ecosystems with land degradation and habitat fragmentation all are undermining the resilience of this important pastoral systems. Shifting climate, effects of water availability, productivity of systems, displacement of herders, and eroding landscapes and rangelands, all of this intensifies conflict. And so these issues of security, food security, all of these are things, and cultural traditions, they're all interconnected. Biodiversity loss is also reducing the genetic diversity that's necessary for species to adapt to a changing environment. And herder communities continue in too many places to be marginalized, hampering their ability to participate and contribute and engage in policy processes and solution building that requires their input. All these changes threaten to further erode lands and livelihoods that have been built through generations of experience. So together, we're going to explore this. We're exploring how we can apply science and learning to traditional practices to bolster resilience of pastoral ecosystems and societies in the face of all these challenges. Nomadic herding can serve as a catalyst of positive change and innovation, contributing to carbon dioxide storage, low carbon development, promoting more sustainable futures. Preservation and restoration of rangelands enhances conservation efforts as well as biodiversity. And we know that the integration of traditional knowledge with modern approaches spurs innovation and adaptation, amplifying the positive impacts on food security, livelihoods, and the well-being of rural areas. But there is a need to do more to ensure that the benefits of nomadic herding are fully realized. Collective action and integration are imperative. First, one thing is clear: we must empower herders to shape their systems and engage in official policy dialogues. Civil society advocacy is needed to foster dialogues and cooperation among the whole diversity of different actors. And we know the private sector must also prioritize responsible practices that respect herders' rights. And this is essential for progress. The second thing, of course, is that we need better science to drive solutions for these complex changing systems. Academic knowledge can be truly pivotal to inform policies and practices that are related to nomadic herding. And it must be coupled with the traditional knowledge to enhance the relevance, to ensure that it can be applied. Partnerships with international organizations offer a crucial technological and financial support for evidence-based decision-making. So I just would like to extend a heartfelt gratitude to, of course, the Global Environment Facility for this unwavering support of the project managing peatlands in Mongolia and enhancing the resilience of pastoral ecosystems and livelihoods of nomadic herders. Funded by GEF, implemented proudly by UNEP, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment and Tourism of Mongolia, this is a demonstration of collective efforts in realizing change. The project develops the capacity to conserve and restore ecosystem services of peatlands, reducing greenhouse gas emissions from degraded peatlands and strengthening resilience of indigenous reindeer herders, benefiting over 12,000 people. So in closing, I encourage each of you to become an active participant in this dialogue, even as more people come in. Your insights, your questions, your comments, this is all invaluable. We need this today and we need this going forward in shaping the trajectory of our collective efforts to enhance the resilience of nomadic herding communities and pastoral ecosystems. The richness of our discussions today holds the potential to really illuminate new pathways, innovative solutions, and contributions to a more sustainable future. Here at UNEP, we are listening as we move forward towards the UN's International Year of Pastoralism in 2026. We can all work together to support nomadic reindeer herders to map your own course towards a brighter and more resilient future for both people and planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gardner. As you mentioned, the reindeer herder communities are threatened with the unsustainable development practices, and they are marginalized. And as you mentioned, the solution depends on the science and the traditional knowledge. So it will be also important to understand and set the scene about what these challenges, what are the issues, what the nomadic reindeer herders are facing and who they are, So I would like to now invite Mr. Anders Oskal, the International Center for Reindeer Herding Executive Director, but also the Secretary General of the World Reindeer Herders. So he's going to set the scene about reindeer herders. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As much as I also must underline the receptivity of Vancouver, a very nice place to be in, I would like to start us off this morning by recognizing that we are, as of now, on the ancestral territory of the Skokomesh, Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And usually, while perhaps we won't meet them at this assembly, I feel it is important to recognize whose ancestral homelands we are threading. Dr. Gardner, ladies and gentlemen, we are very happy to be here. Thinking that perhaps we know a little bit more about GEF and UNEP and so than our audience may know about reindeer herding. A bit of an overview seemed to be appropriate. So this map shows you the reindeer herding areas of the world, and just to say the North Pole is in the middle here, so we live in the north and that is our perspective. As you can see, it's spread over large parts of the northern hemisphere, 3 continents, 24 different indigenous peoples. I myself being Sami, representing one of them. It's also a circumpolar phenomena in that it's spread across 10 national states across the Arctic and subarctic areas. Now, so reindeer herding then extends from Northwest Territories of Canada, in the country we are now, to the forests of Inner Mongolia in China, where the Alagoya evenki are living, to, of course, Scandinavia. So it is indeed a circumpolar phenomena. And these areas are, we will hear more about that later, but these areas are currently undergoing very rapid change, climate change, biodiversity changes, and so on. And we have collaborated. The reindeer herding peoples have had a collaboration between ourselves that goes back to 1990, with the fall of the Iron Curtain back then. So we have 33 years of experience working together. We have our own indigenous CSO that is well functioning, and it also in fact represents the oldest functioning CSO, global CSO for pastoralist peoples. And this is, of course, important, as has been our role in the Arctic Council and our role as of later decades with the UN system. We have a UN ECOSOC consultative status, NGO status, and so on. So we try to engage on different international levels. Reindeer herding is, of course, found in the north where the reindeer lives, and the reindeer is uniquely adapted to this environment. Cold is good, colder, better. It's also a typical indigenous way of life, and it's nomadic, meaning that we are following the reindeer. And insofar as many, if not all, indigenous peoples of the Arctic initially had nomadic lifestyles, today it is mainly or only reindeer herders who continue this, making us think of it also as a nomadic civilization of living. It represents a human-coupled ecosystem. It also represents a model for management of, let's say, the barren Arctic and subarctic areas. And it's based on sustainably utilizing marginal and very variable resources by way of mobility, by following the reindeer. If you look into the picture here, this is from Yamal in the western Siberia. There's nothing here that humans can base their lives on, no sustenance for humans, apart from with the reindeer. So it's the reindeer that permits our peoples not just to survive, but to thrive under the most extreme natural conditions on this planet. And our life then is to follow the reindeer. It is what has defined us as peoples, defined our understanding of the world, our worldviews, our philosophies. And central to this is, of course, that this close interdependence on nature and observations over centuries and millennia have given ground also for our knowledge base, the traditional indigenous knowledge of reindeer herders. That is also very important. It's being talked about more and more, the need to include also this type of knowledge system in improving our understanding of our planet. IPCC talks about it, certainly IPBES, and so on and so forth. And while it's easy to talk about, it's not always so easy to do in practice, to include it, to understand it and make use of it. But this is a central element of what we also try to do here. Give you one example. We work a lot with food. This is a youth project in the Arctic Council where we ask ourselves, how can the indigenous food systems be utilized to respond to Arctic change, rapid Arctic change? And there are many ways in which, well, we could talk about this for a long time, but just to give you one example. And as I used to say, if you give youth responsibility, they would take it. Our youth made this book, which is, well, it was a report to the Arctic Council, the ministerial meeting. Alno means reindeer herd. And I brought a book for Dr. Gardner, UNEP, in appreciation of your support. So this book was, among other things, made by 50 indigenous youth from the Pan-Arctic region. Went into the Arctic Council scientific reviews and so on and so forth. But it was also named the world's best food book in 2018 in competition with 1,372 books from 116 nations. Why is that important? Because this recognition of the work of our youth and their traditional knowledge, their indigenous knowledge, really is needed in a time of great change, because we need our youth to take charge for their own destinies. Pride is key. And from this, we also developed what's now called the Nomad Indigenous Food Lab, which we have entitled probably the coolest kitchen in the world. I believe some may have seen it in action at the Stockholm Plus 50 event. We had it stationed in Stockholm for to host indigenous peoples globally. And it's an innovative instrument by which we give a platform for young people to develop their own societies by using their own knowledge. Then the UN General Assembly last year, after an initiative by Mongolia, decided to have a United Nations Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists in 2026. And this is, of course, very important. It's the first time ever that there's an international year focusing on pastoralists. And of course, this will make a unique opportunity to showcase, on the one hand, that pastoralism is in fact a proven nature-based solution. Pastoralists produce food in areas where no crops can be grown because of unpredictability of nature. Rangelands sequester around 35 up to 35% of the terrestrial carbon of the planet. So it's also very important from that point of view. And of course, insofar as the pastoralists sustainably transform environmental variability into food production, not only for the hundreds of millions of pastoralists, but also beyond that, we could say that pastoralism is part of the future, part of the solution. There have been proposals as to what the content could be. Many of these proposals are fitting very nicely with GEF, UNEP goals, and so. And also it's organized, this steering committees and so are organized according to 11 different social cultural regions, to which yours truly is a member from the Arctic, representing the Arctic region. So this is a great opportunity, we believe, to see how pastoralism fits into the answers of our common future. To sum up, what is most important to us is, in our work, is to try to provide for our young generation, try to provide training opportunities, educational opportunities. And we've tried to do so with different programs and educational offers. And we are working with together with very good partners also, and continuing this with the program, including Harvard Kennedy School, Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, and so on and so forth. But when we work with developing competence, developing knowledge offers for our youth, we think about competence and content, yes, but equally important to think of building their confidence, courage, if you will, and as important to build their contacts, their community. We talk about the 3 C's. So we are very enthusiastic as to the great potential that we see in making a difference for pastoralist youth in ways that will surely strengthen the resilience of reindeer herding cultures and communities, but also would be able to replicate into a wider audience of pastoralists, pastoralist peoples and beyond. So that is what I'd like to say.
Thank you so much, Anders. I would like to remind you the first slide that Anders showed. If you really want to understand where the reindeer herders live, just check the United Nations map, and you will see that the flag, it's exactly where the reindeer herders live. I also want to highlight an important message. Although Anders is a young leader, he's always with the younger leaders. We will see with other panelists during this session. But it is how important to have the young people in the decision-making process, and we will learn what and how they are really changing their communities. So, of course, this was mainly setting the scene, but there are also challenges that the reindeer herders are facing with. And now I would like to introduce my distinguished colleague, Dr. Sven Matheson, who is the head of University of Arctic Institute for Circumpolar Reindeer Husbandry at the International Center for Reindeer Husbandry. So he's going to talk about the challenges that the reindeer herders are facing. Please.
Thank you, Essien. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to see you here. I'm going to talk to you about the challenges. Where do I run this show here? There. Okay, so I'm going to focus on awareness raising related to land degradation, seen from a reindeer herder's perspective. and the role of traditional knowledge, because as Anders said, it's interweaved into the herding community, but when you come to the governance and management, it's virtually not appearing. That's one of the main goals of this project, to change the policy by using that knowledge more. From a herder's perspective, there are different kind of perspectives on the land degradation. But the main thing is industrial development in the herding in the pastoralist areas, the lack of traditional knowledge, so you get wrong use of the pastures. And all of this we could go into. I will start this story of the global reindeer herding community down in Mongolia, in Saganur. We have been working with the Dukha reindeer herders for more than 20 years in Mongolia. There are not so many. There are only 250 indigenous people living in Mongolia, about 3,000 reindeer. So let's go to Mongolia. And what is the challenge? Like Issa Turik, who's sitting here, and me, we have been working there for quite many years. This is the West Taiga. And we repeatedly try to understand that problem, how they could maintain a sustainable livelihood. And the main thing, of course, they talk about climate change. Climate change also hit that little community of indigenous reindeer herders in Mongolia with the melting of the permafrost. This is the Saganur, their main village, where they have their administration, where they have the school system, doctors, and so on. And the permafrost melts. It's 60 meters of permafrost, just 60 centimeters on the top, melting. Make it, as you see, there's poles to make sure that the village doesn't get into the sea. But that's not the problem, they said. Yes, we deal with the climate change. Do you? 4 degrees increase in air temperature? Yeah, the problem is the protected areas, right? Is the protected area a problem? Yes, we have. So, is there sorry, no, not back there. So these are the usual division of different kind of protected area: nature monument, national park, strictly protected, local protected areas. And the reindeer herders, they live in this area. Saganur, that's the town I showed you where the permafrost is melting, and they live here. Usually they used all this territory traditionally. This is in northern part of Mongolia, and this is the Russian border up here. The problem is they say that the conservation has been a more serious threat to the Dukha because they're not allowed to be in the protected area. The main thing then is the number of people, the number of reindeer, number of sheep increases in the leftover areas. So that's where you get the land degradation, you know. And they kind of say, we have to deal with this. We have to find one solution. And I think that's one of the main tasks where we get implementation of policy, is somewhere we could try to help them so Mongolia is able to host the southernmost community of indigenous herding in the world in the future with all these changes. We could move to the Sami society in the Nordic countries, and you see where we are living. All of us are living in a small village of Kautokeino. I'm not a Sami myself, but I've been working for 35 years with Sami reindeer herders. And you see in our village, it's not 1.5 degree increase. It's not 2 degrees, but it's more than 3 degrees increase in air temperature in the spring, which means that snow is melting and the vegetation is growing. As you see on this picture, it's a strong degradation of the grazing land because of the bushification, I call it, you know. They're not able to migrate anymore. So this is one aspect, but again, when I talk to herders, and you could talk to our herders here, they say, oh, it's the industrialization of our migration route, the pasture land, which is the problem. And last week, the Norwegian government decided to electrify the oil and gas extraction in the north, which means that more development of hydroelectric power, more development of windmills, wind turbines on the grazing land, creating huge problems for the herders. So they're getting close to a tipping point. Of course, 3 degrees is a lot when the vegetation grows, snow melt, but the tipping point is created by this activity. So what we did, here you see actually what's going on. Green, this is the old global map provided by UNEP originally to Grydarendal, and we have been working with them, and actually the Scandinavian countries are the place where there is most loss, physical loss of grazing land. But what we did, we invited 3 Dukha students last week. They just have been in Norway now for a training course, a part of our GEF project. So they have been together with Sami youth in Norway, learning leadership about all these aware changes in their territory. We brought them to meet senior reindeer herders in the north. And this is the main LNG factory in Norway, on a little island, but they need to electrify the production of oil and gas in Norway. That means that his grazing area is going to be full of windmills. So we're discussing the problem of protected areas in Mongolia with the herders in Norway losing the land. We don't know how severe it is, but we need to find some practical solutions. There are also challenges for eventually reindeer herders. Just shortly some examples. Fires just now. We are here in Canada seeing all the burning, but also here in the Evenki territory, enormous burning of the tundra, destroying the pastures completely. I think a lot of the Evenki community is reached tipping point. And here you see the number of fires from, in a couple of years, 132 to over 2,000. It's exploding, you know. We don't have control. And it affects people's life. This is the gas pipeline through the Evenki territory, damaging the grazing land. And this is in the middle of the Evenki. All these are mine pictures. I've taken them myself. We are not working in the Russian territories now, not at all. But we have been working there for many years and see how this kind of activity damage the nature and damage the livelihoods of the nomadic people. This is a gold mine, and it's just terrible. And you see the reindeer there in the middle of that mine. So just finally, I will run up, go back to Mongolia, where I started my presentation, which is going to be a core center focus in our project. Building competence locally in Saganor is important for protection of nature. You know, then you have a protected area, but we need to make sure that the Dukha people are a part of that protection strategy. You know, so our idea is we are planning a Dukha indigenous reindeer herder center. Building competence means that we have to build also institutions. Because what we have done, we have said education is so important, and then they go away to Harvard or to Ulaanbaatar, and then they don't go back again to the taiga, you know. So it's very important that we build some institution in their communities. That's why we had these 3 youth over in Norway, in Samiland, for 1 week. And we have started the planning. So here we have Sami, Dofa, and Norwegian architects and reindeer herders in a fantastic co-production of knowledge, planning the future reindeer center in Saganor. So this is just planning, but everything happened during the week last week, and this is how that grew. It's not Anders and Nils and me and Marina, but that group of people who has been planning the future reindeer center for the protection of the nature. I will stop there, so you see a little bit big problem, but there is an opportunity to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sven. As you nicely pictured, there are really big challenges. We always think that climate change is the challenge, but for this community, it's not only the climate change. It's beyond that some of the development initiatives that we think are helpful is mainly causing challenges. But you also nicely provided good examples that if you are provided the solutions, then this community can sort out some of the issues and the challenges. So at this point, I think it's important how these international projects are helpful for communities. I would like to invite Ms. Marina Tonkopiva, the project manager from International Center for Reindeer Herders, to explain a little bit more about this project that is gathering us together here. So Marina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ersin, for the introduction. And could you please turn on the slides? The next one. Thank you. So the working title of the project is Reindeer Herding and Resilience. And if we look here, what is it all about? What is reindeer herding and resilience? This project is about building the knowledge base of the indigenous knowledge of reindeer herders and about enhancing the capacity of reindeer herding youth. Reindeer herders are the main focus and the key actors of this project because sustainable landscape management is impossible without incorporating indigenous knowledge of reindeer herders and of reindeer herding youth. But it is also impossible without raising their voices, without enhancing their capacities, and without training their skills. So this is the official description of the project that you can find in the GEF product. But today I would like to tell you a little bit more, translate this UNEP language into something what we really do and how it looks in real life. So what is the project about? We are trying to, first of all, document and assess indigenous knowledge and translate this knowledge into policies and practices. And how we do that? We do it through training. We do it through bringing young reindeer herders from the circumpolar Arctic together. And we have just returned from the Andal Week. As Svein has already mentioned, we brought together youth from Canada, Alaska, Sweden, Norway, and Mongolia together to discuss land degradation, to discuss challenges that they are facing in their communities, to participate in the workshops. And in these pictures, we can see the workshop on participatory mapping, where reindeer herders and the youth from the circumpolar Arctic are sharing the changes that's been going on in their communities, but not by the means of using traditional maps, but how they see it, how they experience these changes over the years or over the decades that's been going on in their lands. What is the project about? It is about building resilience. How can we do that? We need to make our youth more visible. We need to give them the platform to talk, to cooperate, to perform networking, to learn that there are other young reindeer herders all over the globe who are also facing challenges. Some of these challenges might be the same as pasture areas and land degradation. Some of these challenges might be different. But when they are learning from each other, when they are meeting, I think it's one of the most important aspects of our project. Here in the picture, you can see Hongortsol Mungunchagai. She is a young Duha reindeer herder from Mongolia. And after 2 days of our training in Andal, she's been presenting challenges that they are facing in their communities. And in her presentation, she also mentioned that after the first day, after she talked to young Sami reindeer herders from Sweden and from Norway, she has already identified some possible solutions for the problems that they are facing in the Duha community. So I think that, first of all, bringing young people together, letting them speak and giving them safe space is very important. What is the project about? It is about sharing, and it is about having a dialogue, because indigenous knowledge, it is the knowledge that being transferred through generations within families, within CEDAs, within people who are close to each other. And it is not the knowledge that we are willing to share with anyone outside. So you need to first build a dialogue and have safe space, and then share the knowledge. This is the flyer from our first training course that we had in Andal under the pinnacle of the GEF project this year. And in general, it is the second Andal course that we've been doing within International Center for Reindeer Husbandry. And we are planning to have more training courses because what we are doing in technical terms, we are collecting the information on land degradation. We are working with maps, participatory mapping, GIS mapping, different types of maps to identify environmental challenges and land degradation patterns. We are also developing cases for land use change in the Sami territories in Mongolia and potentially with the Evenki reindeer herders. We are also trying to establish a knowledge hub, and as Svein has already shown you the design of Reindeer Herding Center, because we believe that this center should be a physical unit, but also a knowledge hub to accumulate the knowledge and to bring people to make young reindeer herders stay in their communities and not leave for the big cities or the urban areas. And we are also working on sharing the lessons, on sharing good practices among reindeer herding indigenous nations. Can you please go back? So in the last slide, you can see the topics of our training, because we didn't want this to be something imposed from our side. So we had meetings with the youth, with the reindeer herders in Saganur in Mongolia, and we asked them, what would be your priorities? What do you want to learn? What do you want to train? What skills do you want to have? And so that's what we came up with. So it's traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge, it's knowledge about biodiversity, about different types of mapping, but also what was more important, it's the soft skills, it's communication, it's building networks and building community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marina. A few key things. I think the last point, I wish I had the chance also be asked what I would like to learn. I think that would be definitely very different than what I studied. So you are really empowering youth, even by enabling them to decide what is critical and important. And as you mentioned, giving the floor to young people is important, and making them visible to have discussion and explain what the challenges and the solutions that they are facing. So I would like to invite all our 3 young leaders for the panel discussion together with me. I have a few questions. So we already have a table here. Please join me, if you don't mind, Anders. So
You are too generous.
after you take your place, I would like to start with Ms. Gustu. Yeah, this is it. So, mainly my first question is about empowering the next generation. And my first question goes to our Swedish Sami Reindeer herder, Nils Gustu Kumina. Can you share with us when you have taken part in innovative projects within Sami reindeer herding community? Can you give examples of how traditional knowledge is used in such projects and how it can enhance the sustainability of your livelihood, your community?
Yes, the International Center for Reindeer Husbandry is in partnership with leading universities, where they're doing this training of the youth to enhance their resilience to change. And me as a reindeer herder, I have grown up with this traditional knowledge. And when I participate in this kind of courses and trainings, then I share with the peers and other reindeer herding students. That's one way. And then also in this innovation lab, when reindeer herding youth present their projects that are based in traditional reindeer herding economy.
Thank you so much, Nils Gustu. I think sharing the information with your peers and then trying to really implement is quite important. Of course, we were planning to bring our Mongolian reindeer herders, but we couldn't make it. But we asked the same questions to them, and they recorded their answers. So Marina is going to just share their responses with us.
Тань бацхан уу намайг мөнгөн шагаан хонгор цул гэдэг. Би Монгол улсад цаамаалан амьдардаг залуу цаачин иргэн. Монголын цаачин тухайн иргэдийн хувьд бид өөрсдийн гэсэн туваа хэлтэй бөгөөд энэ нь биднийг тодорхойлдог соёлын салшгүй нэг хэсэг юм. Сүүлийн үед зөвхөн настай хүмүүс л хоорондоо туваа хэлээрээ ярилцаж хэлэлцэхээс бусдаар залуучууд болон хүүхдүүд бид зөөн хэдэн үгийг гадарлахаас цаашлахгүй. Энэ хэвээрээ байдал үргэлжлэлээр байвал цаашид бид туваа хэлээ ашиглаж хэрэглэхгүй болж устдаж үгүй болох мартагдах магадлалтай юм аа. Тиймээс туваа хэлийг тухайн залуучуудын хувьд өргөн хэрэглээнд оруулж өдөр тутамд ашигладаг болохын тулд тэдний боловсролд тусгаж өгөх хүсэлтэй байна.
Сайн байцгаана. Намайг Батэрдний уран баяр гэдэг. Би Монголоос ирсэн. Манай нүдэд тулгамдж буй асуудлын нэг бол ирээдүйн цаашдын бэлтгэл өв соёл алдахгүйгээр авч үлдэх асуудал юм. Манай нүдэд боловсрол хөгжил сайн хөгж өгөө улмаас ихэнх хүүхд залуучууд нь хөгжил сайтай холбоотой суралцдаг. Суралцж ирээд сум орноттой ажиллаж амьдрахад ажлын байгуул, цалин орлого муухаас гадна амьдралд нь үлцээгүй байдаг залуучуудын өөр нутгаар руу зорж амьдрахад нөлөөлдөг. Энэ асуудлын хор уршиг нь цаамаалнаас хөндөрч эртээр үеэс уламжлагдсан ирсэн. Цаамаалаа маллах арга ухаан өв соёл нь алдагдсаад устдад түрээд байна.
Thank you. I think, as you can see, their vision is really quite big, that sometimes we need these important perspective of how to deal with the loss. It's not only the environment, but also the culture that these communities are losing, and these young leaders are already also trying to find a solution to save them. Of course, the intergenerational knowledge for sustainable development is also quite important and challenging. So my next question goes to our Norwegian Sami reindeer herder Issa Turi. Nomadic reindeer herding is rich in traditional knowledge, passed down from generation to generation. And how is this knowledge used by young leaders like you in a new innovative projects for sustainable future? Could you also describe where you have collaborated across your elders, your young kids across to address these challenges? So how you are benefiting from different people?
Well, yeah, this collaboration between the younger and the elder reindeer herders, or the generational between generations, is always ongoing. You know, when it's about traditional knowledge, and for young leaders and young generations coming after us, I think it's really important that we teach them how we are struggling with or how we are dealing with the changes happening now, because in the future, I think is with the climate change and the developments ongoing in the Arctic areas. Because of the climate change, it's going to be different, and they have to deal with the new generations have to deal with these changes much more than I think my generation has and generations before me, because of the changes happening in such a rapid pace that with the climate, you know, with the permafrost thawing and with the changing of the biodiversity and the changing well, what can I say, that the industrial development happening in such a pace that for my generation, I think it's important to tell to the younger generation, or teach them what we have done, so that they understand where they are coming from and what is working actually now, before they start, you know, how can I say, changing, or not changing, but developing. Because in the future, I think reindeer husbandry has to be a little bit different. It has to be managed differently than today. I don't know how exactly, because because of these changes of the environment and the development of industrial development. So I think that's the main thing that we can tell about. Teach them what has worked for us, and teach them or so that they can make the best decisions for the future. You see one thing is, you know, which is very easily explained, is mobility for pastoralists is the most crucial thing for survival, I think. As pastoralist way of life, mobility is the most important thing. And the way we have dealt with that is, we have also, how can I say this? There are two types of two ways of doing, or not doing things, but we have also a state that is governing reindeer herding, and usually these states or countries, they are not traditionally, they have looked down upon pastoralism and upon nomadism, so they have always tried to steer us into more sedentary or like a farmer's way. So on this government or these laws that we have, and the Reindeer Acts, well, I'm talking about Norway, of course, but the Reindeer Acts and everything are also preventing us to develop our own ways or to continue our own ways also. So we have always these two things, our traditional ways and the way the governments want us to act are always colliding with each other, and sometimes it's quite difficult. But I think for young people it's mobility, equal mobility, and that's the way. That's what we have. At least that's what when I talk to younger reindeer herders. That's what I focus on.
Thank you so much, Isat, especially highlighting how you are engaging and mainly making the key message about the role and importance of mobility. We have been always hearing this adaptation and having this resilience, but really discussing this adaptive living style is something that definitely different what we are doing in urban life than what you are facing, and mainly bringing this important skills that you have mentioned into your life, and then you are also teaching the young people how to cope with the unknown challenges that you are mainly thinking that could be the future challenges of the community that would be facing. And then I would like to bring this resilience and adaptive issues back to this panel, and I would like to mainly ask to Anders if you can share some examples of the time when you had really fruitful collaboration between policymakers and indigenous organizations, especially related to these challenges that you are facing and how to cope with them, and how do you see your role in strengthening the resilience of the nomadic reindeer herder communities? How and what type of roles that you can play?
Yes, thank you, Yasin. First, if I may, just to make a short comment to the statement from Hungursur from Mongolia, when she speaks about language. Indigenous languages have been used as a proxy for biodiversity. It does tell you something about the indigenous people's knowledge systems that is foundational for the resilience in face of change. So I think her statement, as for the others, also was very, very interesting from that point of view. I would say that we are very thankful, though we spent many years in preparation to get this project, we are very thankful for the process in itself, because it facilitated a dialogue which we had not had before between reindeer herders, reindeer herding communities, and national authorities. And this within the framework of working to establish a UNEP project with GEF funding and so on. So that in itself has been rewarding, we should say. It's not always been easy, but now we are really getting ahead and starting. And as I said before, we are very happy. We're very satisfied with the support from UNEP, not least Elsin and your team. So that must be said. As for the roles that we could play, as you understand, we try to focus on providing something for youth, because the challenges before us are of very, long-term. They are long-term challenges. We need long-term responses too. And post the Kunming-Montreal meeting, states are now working on their biodiversity policies with the global biodiversity framework, strategies, and so on. And we want to work to empower indigenous youth towards these processes by building competence locally, including traditional indigenous knowledge, in order to make our youth and our communities, societies, and peoples better able to handle change. And this goes also to what Dr. Gardner mentioned, the interconnectedness of drivers. So we have climate change that on average now, latest research shows us goes 4 times faster in the Arctic than the rest of the globe. That in itself is concerning. We have a natural crisis, nature crisis, biodiversity change. We have land use change, as is and Svein related to the industrial development of pastures. IPCC in its 5th report, the adaptation report in 2014, stated that the most important adaptive strategy for reindeer herders under climate change is protection of the grazing land. These challenges are really interconnected, and it puts a great challenge also on policy development. How are we going to handle this in ways that will bring us up on top of the challenges rather than going down in the waves ahead? So we will try to continue what we do to build these 3 C's, as I spoke about. And in reality, what we're trying to do is to make our young people better able to handle their own destinies. This is how to say what we are trying to provide for them, because we cannot take the steps that is needed in every society, every community in the future. But we can make an effort. We can make a difference in training our youth to take a step forward and become the future leaders that our future really demands of us. Our let's say concerning and somewhat unclear Arctic horizon demands this of us. So if anything, that is the role that we must play and try to play. And we are very grateful for the partnership with UNAP in this regard, and that GEF has funded also this. Well, for others, maybe a small initiative, but for us, it is a way in which we can consolidate in a time of great Arctic change. Consolidate and look ahead and try to have our youth with us, with their own voice in this process. So I just want to repeat that.
Thank you so much, Anders. There are lots of things to really reflect on. I mean, I just took a few notes. So first of all, challenges are long-term and solutions should be also long-term. I think this is an important point. And thanks also for bringing the importance of this global biodiversity framework and how now the reindeer community, herder community is also planning to support and also complement this GBF framework in these countries. So these are quite important initiatives. And I think, as you have already mentioned, training, and mainly enabling the young people to make their own destiny is quite an important. I would like to now also ask Marina to show us one more video that another herder from Mongolia is sharing her response.
While we're waiting, perhaps I might add that you can see the scenery behind here. That's the city, southern city of Arendal in Norway, where there was a high-level political gathering every year. And so this is where we brought our youth last week for this training program. This is where it was recorded with a view of the harbor in the background. So in case you wondered how Mongolian reindeer is ended up in the ocean.
I said it's gone. Зоригтыг өдрөгддөг би Монголоос ирсэн. Цаа чи иргэн. Манай Монгол улсын засгийн газраас цаа буг өсгөж үржүүлэх бодлого хэрэгжүүлж байгаа. Цаа буг болон цаа чи иргэд бид тусгай хамгаалалтын газар нутагт ойрхон амьдардаг. Тийм учраас цаа буг өсгөж үржүүлэхийн тулд бид газар нутгаа үргэлжлүүлэн тэлэх санал хүсэлтэй байна.
So I think this is the challenge of the project, to look at the protected area management and how to really benefit from reindeer herders in protecting the protected area together and make it multiple benefits. So this is, I think, in another event, in another side event, or maybe in another event, we will hear more from you, because that will be, I think, quite an important solution set that we would be really willing and wanting to hear. I don't know whether you, distinguished guests, have any questions to our leaders here. So please, madam, it will be very nice if we can also learn your name and your organization if possible.
My name is Peggy Smith. I am representing the FSC Indigenous Foundation, which is based in Panama. To me, the message is clear. Pastoralists are being squeezed by industrial development on the one side and conservation initiatives on the other. And it's not unique to pastoralists, it's happening to indigenous peoples around the world. And since we're at an international meeting, I wanted to ask the representatives of GEF and UNEP, besides funding these projects, which I think are very valuable, what role do you play in convincing the governments, the nation states who are your members, that they need to do things differently, and not necessarily training issues, but raising the voice of indigenous people to a decision-making level? Because that's the only thing that's going to change the way that things are developing now. So the question is for GEF and UNEP, what do you see your role being in terms of convincing these nation states that they need to do things differently?
Thank you so much. From the GEF, I don't know whether we have any response, so we cannot provide a response on behalf of the GEF, but happy to provide on behalf of UNEP. So I'm looking at my colleagues, or would you like to respond?
Hi, I'm Doreen Robinson from UNEP, head of the biodiversity program globally. I think a couple of things going on. First, I was going to ask a question about power differentials in terms of respect for different kinds of knowledge and experience. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do, is look at how we can facilitate processes and dialogues, including these international policy dialogues or national systems, in different ways to mitigate some of those power differentials. And I'll be the first to say, you know, the issue for me is, how do you make sure that traditional knowledge is given the same power and voice in those discussions alongside more Western appreciated evidence-based peer-reviewed knowledge? Both have different power, both have different things to offer. And so that's a big part of what we're doing, including in what we're doing in supporting national processes for these new biodiversity action plans, to make sure it's not just tokenism, where you have certain people coming up and speaking in certain voices, but the actual way we facilitate the dialogues and the discourse, the way we also work on, I think what was talked about, the soft skills of diplomacy and leadership, and being able to create space for different people to speak with their own voice, but also help them and coach them and mentor them so that they can be heard in these more traditional, let me say, UN-y or national types of processes. So this quality of the discourse is just as important as some of the data and evidence and science we're bringing in. So it's definitely something that we do. We also try to do a bit more in bringing these different perspectives across different countries, because I think that's in this solution finding, in this rapidly changing world, I don't think we can only look down into our national systems, but we've got to have much more cross-facilitation and learning in these processes, which is hard to do because there's a strong sense of nationalism in our problems and our solutions, but how do we create the space for that? So those are some of the ways, but I agree, we have to all collectively work together to do that better.
So hi everyone, my name is Mia Kellenberg. I am from the GEF Secretariat. So this is very far from my area of expertise, but just as a general approach from the GEF, I think we are really trying to bring up at both the national level and the international level different voices and different groups. So I'm mostly working with cities and local governments, for example. But at an international level and in the big conventions and agreements, bringing their voice, bringing indigenous peoples, civil society, because they also need to be heard there. It's not only in the States, but at the international level. And in doing this, UNEP is of course one of the key partners because of their relation with the conventions, with the agreements. And in general, something that we have started doing now and will do more moving forward is to see how we can work directly with other groups, not only working through the national government, but working directly with local communities, indigenous peoples, cities, and so on, because we know that the way from the GEF down to that level, there are many steps and that can be challenging. So that's also something that we are trying to do already now, but even more in the future. And I think the theme of this assembly on inclusion, youth, indigenous peoples, women, and so on is a step in that direction. So it's a very, very important comment and something that we are indeed doing. Thank you.
Just to complement, thank you so much, Mia, for the response. And just to complement, again, at the intersection of UNEP and the GEF, I can also give you two examples. One is the new Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, and which is again will be managed by the GEF, and UNEP and other agencies will support the member state. One of the priorities of that new fund is there is a specific allocations for the indigenous community-led project, which I think is quite important and critical. And we have already started before that initiative as UNEP. We recently got an approval for a full-size project, which means like 7 million in Brazil, working with the indigenous communities to collect data, as Doreen said, through their indigenous knowledge and make an inventory of the biodiversity richness of Brazil through their own system and database management system. So there are initiatives, there are empowerments, and as we are seeing here, these projects are quite instrumental and important to enable the communities to speak and make a voice in these international initiatives. I think, Sven, you would like to also highlight.
Thank you for your brilliant comments. They're very good, and it's very timely just now with all these changes. So, and you hear our Duha youth, they believe in their own government, and I believe that Mongolia is going to be a case where this is going to happen. I'm more worried about European Norway, where the Supreme Court of Norway in Norway came up with a verdict that Norway violated indigenous people's rights in a wind turbine case just 700 days ago, and it's not solved, you know. So in Mongolia, I think we will have some mechanism, and we will show that we are able to protect nature and still able to maintain the livelihoods. In Europe, northern part of Europe, like in Sweden and Norway, we have huge challenges. And the only one way we could solve it is work together. So the Mongolian case is going to be a showcase for Sweden, Norway, and Finland, I think. Maybe Anders, you could comment on it, but this is the main societal discussion in Norway just now, the violation of the Sami reindeer livelihood. And we need solutions, and we need mechanisms to make sure that the states are more coupled into the process. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for your excellent remarks. Ma'am, I heard you say FSC. Would that be as in Forest Stewardship Council? Yes, just to say that the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, have some standards that are very, very impressive coming from industry. It's really promising. I urge you all to have a look at that. standards where free, prior, and informed consent is an integral part of it, developed by industry together with indigenous peoples. That's like a best case. I just wanted to mention that since you were here. Well, I think we can all agree that it's hard to include something you don't understand. Sometimes our knowledge and our knowledge systems are poorly understood, let's say that. But if you can use any opportunity to remind governments, to remind states, to remind international systems that our knowledge is real knowledge. It's not mysticism. It's not spiritualism. It is real knowledge developed for us to handle our own natural environment in partnership with reindeer. I can give you many examples. One that we use is that in the village where I live, Reindeer is used 318 terms for snow. Why? Did we invent these words for fun? No, it's real knowledge. And just to, insofar as we can say we have real knowledge, let's also remind states, institutions, governments, that there is no such thing as a perfect knowledge system. You may say that the changes we observe in the Arctic are beyond our experience. Well, maybe so, but guess what? It's also outside of science. Scientific models are striving to explain why changes are going this fast. So in other words, for us to cope in the best possible way, we need to realize we need 2 + 2 to become 5. 4 is not enough when we look ahead. And so there are ways in which we could do that, but this project also provides us an opportunity to show in more concrete terms, what does this indigenous knowledge mean? Not mysticism, real knowledge about the areas. And if I may, sometimes we like to tease our natural scientist friends a little bit, just to, and it's in a way sad that we have to do this from time to time, but think about it this way. We were herding reindeer up north while science still thought the world was flat. In other words, we have some knowledge of how to survive and thrive in the north. Another example which we use from time to time is to say that if you're stuck in a blizzard in the Arctic tundra, okay, who would you like to be there with? A Nobel Prize winner in physics, or B, an old reindeer herder? We have to use such simple examples to illustrate the mere fact that we have knowledge about where we have lived. We have real knowledge about the North. We have real knowledge that no scientific community possess as of today. We can work together as scientists. More collaboration is possible. So therefore also we are happy for this opportunity to demonstrate, to prove our own knowledge systems, our own knowledge, and thus increase our holistic understanding of our world.
Any other questions? It's almost 2 to 10:30, so time to close this session. I think the session was very clear, so I don't need to provide any summary, but I think I need to just thank to our panelists, our speakers, and to our guests for being with us. This is, as Sven was mentioning, the beginning of the journey. So, but I think it was an important meeting that we had the chance to give you a glimpse of why reindeer herders are important for the nature, for the land, and how they are coping with the challenges. The challenges are growing, so they also need support. Of course, we know that they are not only the indigenous community expecting the support of the international community, there are other communities, so there are lots of things to do, and we will be doing all together, just working all together. Thank you for your time and for being with us. Thanks.